What's going on, guys? It's B-Mills. This morning I was watching ESPN First Take, as I usually do, just like a lot of you probably do, because it is my favorite sports debate show to watch, as it is for many of you watching this video. Now today's Wednesday, August 10th, 2016. Today they were talking about a new list that ESPN released of top-tier quarterbacks, second-tier quarterbacks, and this list was based off of surveys given to officials and coaches all around the NFL. Now, what happened, or I think how it came out, I think it was Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers were tied for first in the top-tier group, and then Ben Roethlisberger was the only other quarterback in that top-tier group. Now, apparently, the criteria for getting in this group is a quarterback who wins games for their teams consistently, and then the second tier were quarterbacks that won games for their teams inconsistently, and then after that, I think it was a quarterback that needs a dominant rushing game, and then after that, it's a quarterback that needs a good team all around to be successful. So in that second tier, I think it was Drew Brees, Matt Stafford, Cam Newton. A lot of things I didn't agree with. I think Drew Brees still belongs in Tier 1 because we all know the Saints only win games because of Drew Brees. And then I don't know how Matthew Stafford's a Tier 2 quarterback. And then Cam Newton is in Tier 2. Now, Cam Newton was the big thing they were debating about today. Now, Max Kellerman. As much as I'm trying to like Max Kellerman, I did not think that the guys at Walt Disney and ESPN could possibly find a bigger dick rider than Skip Bayless. Now, I'm a fan of Skip Bayless. I think he does dick ride a little bit, especially when it comes to the Cowboys and the Spurs, but he backs up what he says with statistics, with facts, so you can't say he's 100% wrong, but you could say that his opinion is ridiculous. Now, Max Kellerman, I'm enjoying the show since he's joined, but he's made some crazy, I don't know, like when he was talking about Alex Rodriguez and how Alex Rodriguez deserves to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, how he deserves to have his number retired for the New York Yankees, and how he deserves to be in Memorial Park, and with all his steroid allegations, all his lying, all his deceit, it's hard for me to say that he belongs in the Hall of Fame first ballot. And he just was dick riding Alex Rodriguez, basically. He's a New York Yankees fan. And today, his dick riding of choice was Cam Newton. Now, I know what you guys are going to say, but let me start this off by saying I think Cam Newton is a great football player. I think he deserved the MVP for the most part. But to me, he's not an elite quarterback. He's not in that top tier that they were talking about, the 4 or 5 elite quarterbacks who mean everything to their team, who, if they fall apart, they're no longer Super Bowl contenders because they don't have their quarterback. So those guys are obviously, to me, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, like I said before. I think you could put Ben Roethlisberger up there. I think he's a little overrated in terms of this list because he's above everybody else that's not Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And then to me, Russell Wilson's in that question. Guys, he's been great. Ever since he came in the league, he was the underdog, and he came in, and he has been one of the most efficient quarterbacks the game has ever seen. Then you could make a case for Carson Palmer, and so it gets a little cloudy after that. So to me, the top-tier quarterbacks are the top 4. You could say top 5, but to me it's Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, and Drew Brees. So is Cam Newton number 5? Maybe. Could be Ben Roethlisberger. Could be Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers is one of the more underrated quarterbacks who doesn't have a team anywhere close to the other quarterbacks I just named. But does Cam Newton deserve to be in that name of elite quarterback? And to me, not yet. He hasn't done enough for me yet. He did win the MVP. He had an outstanding season last year. You're talking about 35 passing touchdowns to 10 interceptions, a pass rating 99.4, which isn't very, not top tier, but very efficient. And you're talking about the 10 touchdowns and 600 plus rushing yards that he added along to it. So he was the best player on the field, at least on offense, for the Carolina Panthers. Now, where I start getting shaky Did he deserve MVP? I think it's very debatable. I think let's split his season in half. Let's talk about his first 8 games. I think he had a quarterback rating of like 8, or a passer rating of 83 over the first 8 games. I think that, let's see where that would rank. That would have ranked 31st behind Joe Flacco, Matt Hasselbeck, Jameis Winston, Blaine Gabbert, Sam Bradford, Brock Osweiler. I mean, the first 8 weeks of the season for Cam Newton were pretty bad. I mean, 31st ranked at the end. If he had this passer rating at the end of the year, he would have been the 31st ranked quarterback. He had many games with most of his games were passer ratings under 80. I mean, that's awful. He had a couple good games. A good game against Green Bay and a good game against Tampa Bay. And one against New Orleans. None of those defenses are imposing, but then you talk about the second half of the season. This is where he earned in quotations that MVP. Over 100 passer rating in every game except 3, I think. He was scoring. It seemed like, he was scoring touchdowns. He was rushing the ball. He was doing great. I think he had a game where he had 100 yards rushing, and I mean, he was fantastic. But I want to bring up another name. Kirk Cousins. Now, I'm not saying that Kirk Cousins is nearly as good as Cam Newton. I'm not going to go there, but everyone, dogs on Kirk Cousins because he doesn't win against teams with winning records, so he doesn't belong in the top 10 or top 15 or whatever you want to say. He doesn't deserve to be franchise tagged. He doesn't deserve to get paid the money that's getting paid now. But I think I'm going to try and put it on the screen. I'm going to put their second half season stats side by side and let you compare. Now, Kirk Cousins in his last 8 games only had 2 games with the passer rating under 100. He played fantastic. He wasn't lights out. He didn't score 3 touchdowns a game, 4 touchdowns a game like Cam Newton. And he surely didn't end up having 10 rushing touchdowns at the end of the year, but he did have 5. So, but none of these teams, most of these teams that he beat were not, were not very good teams, not very good defenses. But then you look at Cam Newton's second half schedule. You talk about Green Bay's defense, which was on and off last year, then Tennessee, then Washington, then Dallas, then New Orleans, then Atlanta, then the New York Giants, then Atlanta again, and then Tampa Bay. I mean, you're talking about some of the worst defenses in the league last year. And tearing those defenses up doesn't really impress me very much. And so, did he deserve the MVP last year? I mean, yeah, he did. I mean, 45 touchdowns is 45 touchdowns. I mean, I think he was 6 touchdowns above the second place guy, which was Tom Brady, I believe. But to me, it was Tom Brady. Tom Brady's team was crumbling, or his offense was crumbling around him. I mean, if Gronkowski wasn't hurt, Edelman was hurt. If Edelman wasn't hurt, Gronkowski was hurt. He already had poo-ass running backs. They all got hurt. His offensive line was getting hurt. I mean, Tom Brady, I think he means a lot more to his team than Cam Newton does. And you talk about Cam Newton, but the Carolina Panthers wouldn't have gone 15-1 without the services of Cam Newton. And, I pretty much agree with that. But you look at their first 8 games when he was playing god-awful. They only went 8-0 without a very good quarterback. That defense, carried them through most of the season until the very end. I mean, to say that Cam Newton means more to his team than Tom Brady does, I mean, I couldn't go there. But, I mean, it depends on how you look at MVP. Is it MVP most valuable player in the league or most valuable player to their team? I mean, there's different ways you can look at it. But I think the most valuable player to their team is Tom Brady. Now, Max Kellerman says that Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the NFL. I agree with that. But then he says Cam Newton is number 2, that he's ahead of Tom Brady, that he's ahead of Russell. He's ahead of all these guys that have been proving it year in, year out. And that is my biggest issue with Max Kellerman saying Cam Newton is already an elite quarterback. You're talking about a guy who played very well. He did play at an elite level the second half of the season, but that is the only time where he's been an elite quarterback, where he's been even a top-tier quarterback. That is the only time in his entire career where he was a quote-unquote elite quarterback. And it's not like last year was his rookie season. I mean, this was his 5th year. Wasn't it his 5th year in the league? So, I mean, you talk about this guy like he is just, already the next, best quarterback in the league. And I think we ought to pump the brakes on that a little bit. I mean, you're talking about guys like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, guys that have been proving it year in and year out. And Tom Brady had a fantastic season last year throughout the entire season. I mean, when he lost pieces, he went down a little bit, but he was still playing very good. So to sit here and kind of disrespect these other players and say that Cam Newton is already better than all of them, I mean, I just can't agree with Max Kellerman on this one. I mean, he said a lot of crazy things since he's arrived on First Take. That's why he's being paid. But, man, I haven't seen a guy that dick road players. I mean, I don't even think Skip Bayless, buttered up these players like Max Kellerman does. So is Cam Newton a top-tier quarterback? Is he elite? I think he's on the brink. I don't think he's there yet. I think, if he comes and he just destroys the league again like he did in the second half of last season, that's great. I mean, prove me wrong, whatever. But it's just, to me, there's a consistency factor when it comes to being an elite quarterback, doing it game in and game out, year in and year out, constantly keeping your team as a contender, constantly winning games for your team. And to me, Cam Newton's defense won a lot more games than Cam Newton did last year. I mean, they were an elite defense last year. They were the reason they were winning most of these games to me. And then you talk about Cam Newton. He played pretty well in the playoffs, and then he goes to the Super Bowl. And I'm not saying he played bad in the Super Bowl because they were dropping balls. But, I mean, the play, to me, that defined that Super Bowl, more than the Von Miller strip sack and then was recovered for a touchdown, whatever. More than that play was that fumble when Cam Newton stared at the ball and decided not to jump on it. I think that was the defining moment of the season last year. Not the MVP he won, but the Super Bowl that he lost because he wouldn't jump on that football. And don't get it twisted. He did lose that game because he didn't jump on that football. I mean, there were a lot of plays that his team screwed up. But, man, I mean, this guy screwed up. And I think he's going to have to overcome that this season. I think he can. I mean, he's getting Kelvin. Oh, that's another thing. Everyone's saying, oh, but Cam Newton did it without any weapons. He didn't have Kelvin Benjamin. All he had was Ted Ginn. But, guys, Greg Olsen, he's an elite tight end in the league. And Cam Newton's had way better weapons than this, and he's never produced like this. He had Steve Smith at one point. He had Kelvin Benjamin last year. And all the years before last year, he was average. I mean, average. He was the definition of mediocre. And last year, I give it to him. Last year, he had the least amount of weapons he's ever had. He didn't have a very good wide receiver. He did still have Greg Olsen. He did still have a good backfield. But to say that, oh, he's the best quarterback now because he has the least amount of weapons and he did the most with them, I call BS so far. I mean, as of now, I call that BS because he's had good weapons before and he didn't produce. So what changed this year? I don't know. I think maybe he just stepped his game up. Maybe something just finally clicked for him, but we'll see if that transfers into next year. But to me, as of now, he is not an elite quarterback in this league. Max Kellerman saying if we had a draft right now, his first pick would be Cam Newton. That's horseshit. I mean, Aaron Rodgers better be your first pick. And even I think most people will take Tom Brady over Cam. I mean, if you're talking about this next season, who do you want behind center? Are you going to take the guy that has only played one good half season in his 5-year career? Or are you going to take the guys that are always in the playoffs, always Super Bowl contenders like an Aaron Rodgers, like a Russell Wilson, like a Tom Brady? You're going to take Cam Newton over them? I mean, these guys have proven it. That's just me. So I'm going to stop rambling now. I appreciate you guys checking out the video. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. Give the video a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.